morning sun filtered through the tall, arched windows of Catherine Palace, casting pale golden beams across the parquet floors of the Amber Room. On that day in June 1941, the air was thick with the scent of linden trees blooming beyond the palace walls, their delicate fragrance mingling with the sharper smell of fresh polish used by the conservators. Stepping carefully, a young museum curator named Anna Petrovna smoothed her gloved hand along the edge of a mosaic panel, taking stock of its glimmering honey-colored stones. Baltic amber fitted together in intricate patterns, interlaced with gilded wood and mirrored panels. Just days earlier, the news from the West had grown increasingly dire. German forces advancing, the threat of invasion drawing closer to Leningrad. Yet inside these opulent halls, Anna and her colleagues moved with a quiet urgency, their faces taut with worry, as they debated how best to protect the fragile panels that had for centuries been the pride of the Russian imperial family. A conservator knelt at the northern wall, carefully prying loose an amber rosette, pausing now and then to dab sweat from his brow with a kerchief. Dust drifted in the sunlight as wooden crates, marked with bold Cyrillic script, stood ready to receive the priceless fragments. In an adjacent corridor, the footsteps of soldiers echoed as a detachment from the People's Commissariat for Internal Affairs arrived to oversee the evacuation. The soldiers' boots tracked mud from the rain-soaked gardens, and a small puddle glistened on the marble floor, unnoticed. Anna exchanged a tense glance with her superior, Ivan Mikhailovich, who held a faded inventory list and spoke in hushed tones. "We'll never finish in time." Outside in the palace grounds, the steady thrum of engines signaled the approach of trucks meant to carry the dismantled panels eastward, away from the impending front. The Amber Room's golden glow, so carefully curated and preserved, flickered across anxious faces. Within those walls, the labor of hands, dusty, trembling, determined, continued, even as the distant boom of artillery began to roll across the horizon. Each piece lifted from the wall, each careful wrapping in oilcloth, was not just a preservation of art, but an act of hope and a moment of human defiance in the shadow of disaster. As the first bitter chills of autumn 1941 swept across the cobbled avenues of Leningrad, pressure mounted with an intensity that echoed in every stone and shadow. The city, long defined by its grandeur and artistic heritage, now braced itself under a suffocating military encirclement. Nazi troops advanced along the southern and northern approaches, their artillery stationed on the outskirts, poised to unleash thunderous barrages upon the city's cherished edifices. Inside the Catherine Palace in Tsarskoye Selo, a corps of museum staff, curators, carpenters, and laborers, worked with feverish urgency, their hands red and raw as they dismantled decorative panels, golden moldings, and the lustrous amber mosaics of the famed Amber Room. The palace's gilded halls, once echoing with the laughter of visiting dignitaries, now reverberated with the clatter of crowbars and the low voices of weary workers. Beyond the palace gates, columns of civilians trundled through ever-narrowing alleyways, hands clutching ration cards, faces pinched by hunger and fear, their eyes flicking anxiously skyward at the drone of hostile aircraft. Storefronts were hastily boarded, statues wrapped in sandbags, and priceless paintings stacked in crates, transported under moonless skies toward makeshift bunkers as cultural guardians attempted to outpace the relentless approach of war. In the city's public squares, volunteers dug anti-tank ditches and erected barricades from toppled lampposts and broken paving stones, the metallic clang of tools punctuating the uneasy silence of anticipation. In cramped apartments, families clustered around radios, listening for word from the front lines, while children drew pictures by candlelight, their crayon stubs, their laughter subdued. Amid this atmosphere of siege, the fate of the Amber Room hung in perilous balance. Every crate nailed shut in the palace's grand chambers felt like a desperate wager against time and fate. The bureaucracy of preservation clashed with the chaos of retreat. Lists were checked and rechecked, seals affixed to boxes, while outside in the courtyards, the distant rumble of tanks grew louder with each passing dawn. The city's defenders, soldiers and civilians alike, now bore a double burden, not only to shield their homes and loved ones from destruction, but to safeguard the cultural treasures that define their collective identity, even as hunger gnawed at their resolve and the cold seeped inexorably through stone and bone. Within the ornate halls of the Catherine Palace, outside St. Petersburg, the Amber Room stood as a shimmering testament to 18th century craftsmanship and imperial ambition. Candles flickered endlessly along its gilded cornices, their wicks trimmed by liveried attendants who moved quietly, careful not to brush the delicate amber mosaics inlaid across every wall. The sense of beeswax polish and fresh-cut wood lingered in the air, mingling with the sweet, resinous aroma that seemed to emanate from the amber itself. Each early morning before the palace opened its doors to noble guests and curious European dignitaries, a team of artisans arrived to inspect the panels, running calloused fingertips over smooth orange and honey-colored surfaces, searching for cracks or signs of dampness. In the winter of 1941, as the rumble of artillery grew closer, a group of Soviet curators and volunteers, faces drawn and fingers chapped by the cold, hurriedly dismantled the room's panels, carefully labeling each segment with stubby pencils on scraps of brown paper. They wrapped the fragile amber tiles in layers of linen and cotton, stacking them in crates scavenged from storerooms, their boots echoing on the parquet floors as they worked through the night. Outside, the grounds of Tsarskoye Selo were thick with fog, muffling the distant shouts of soldiers preparing for evacuation. Despite their frenzied efforts, the walls of the Amber Room resisted their attempts, the centuries-old glue clinging stubbornly to gilded wood, splinters flying as crowbars bit into ornate moldings. As dawn broke, shafts of pale light illuminated the dust motes swirling above empty spaces where panels had hung, while the remaining crates, heavy and awkward, were heaved onto horse-drawn wagons by exhausted men in drab uniforms. In those last hours before German troops entered the palace, the echoes of hurried footsteps and whispered instructions lingered in the corridors. Some fragments of the room, too delicate to move, were left behind, their presence a silent testament to the desperate attempts to save one of Russia's greatest treasures from the violence that now stalked the streets outside. In the dying days of August 1941, an uneasy silence settled upon the Catherine Palace, interrupted only by the frantic efforts of staff laboring under the grim, ever-present threat of German artillery. The once glorious Amber Room, its honeyed panels already stripped from the walls and laid out across the marred wooden floors, became the focal point of a desperate mission. Armed with improvised tools, museum curators and soldiers moved with hushed urgency, lifting delicate gold-leafed carvings and brittle, centuries-old amber mosaics into hastily constructed crates. Sweat gleamed on their brows as they wrapped the fragile masterpieces in layers of cloth and paper, hands trembling with the knowledge that every passing hour brought the German Wehrmacht closer. The halls echoed with the muffled thuds of footsteps and the rasp of crates sliding across floorboards scarred by the shuffling of heavy boots. Down below, in the palace's drafty corridors, a convoy of horse-drawn carts, their wheels caked in the black mud of the encroaching Russian autumn, waited to bear the treasure away. Yet even as the last crate was sealed and the horses harnessed, it became painfully clear. The sheer scale and delicacy of the Amber Room outpaced the museum staff's ability to dismantle and remove it in time. Some panels too fragile to survive the journey were left behind, exposed and vulnerable. As the first Nazi troops marched through the palace gates on September 17th, the haunting gleam of amber and gold still clung to the walls, a silent testament to what could not be saved. The German Art Commission, led by Dr. Alfred Rohde, arrived soon after, meticulously cataloging the room's remnants with methodical precision. Under the watchful eyes of armed soldiers, Rhodey's team pried the remaining panels from the walls, their movements deliberate and unsparing. Shards of amber splintered under unforgiving hands, falling to the parquet floors with a brittle musical clatter. The room, once alive with light and color, stood hollowed, its spirit packed away in crates stamped with bold black Reichsadler insignias. Outside, the autumn air was thick with smoke from distant artillery, but within those gilded chambers, the fate of the Amber Room had passed a threshold. Removed from Russian soil, its destiny now lay in foreign hands, its return uncertain, and its legend forever altered by these irreversible actions. Inside the cool, echoing corridors of the Catherine Palace, dust motes drift through shafts of light, glittering over the spaces where the Amber Room once dazzled. Guides lead visitors through reconstructed chambers, their voices hushed with reverence and curiosity as they recount tales of opulence and loss. Elderly women, their hands trembling ever so slightly, brush their fingers along the replica panels, tracing the contours where millions of amber tiles once gleamed. Each year, scholars arrive with dog-eared notebooks and magnifying glasses, hoping to match archival photographs with the intricate inlays that artisans have labored to recreate. In a small St. Petersburg apartment, an aging war survivor carefully unfolds a faded photograph, revealing a black and white image of the original Amber Room, her eyes welling with tears as she recalls her childhood visits, the way the worn glow of amber seemed to chase away the chill of Russian winters. The sense of loss is palpable in these physical gestures, the hesitant touch, the reverent gaze, the whispered stories exchanged in corners of the palace, where echoes of footsteps mingle with memories. In Kaliningrad, former Königsberg, locals gather in smoky taverns, passing on tales their grandparents told, of German soldiers carrying away crates filled with treasures, of bombs falling, of hurried burials beneath the rubble of burning castles. These stories are recounted with a mixture of pride, sorrow, and resignation, each retelling adding layers to the Amber Room's legend. Meanwhile, on the Baltic coast, divers slip into cold, murky waters, sifting through silt and debris, searching for any trace. Amber beads, gilded wood, a lost panel, drawn by the enduring hope that some piece of the room might have survived beneath the waves. The physicality of these acts, from the delicate handling of surviving artifacts to the laborious efforts of reconstruction, from the preservation of oral histories to the tangible annual pilgrimages to the Catherine Palace, demonstrate how the Amber Room has persisted in human memory, not merely as a story, but as a living, contested inheritance. Across generations and borders, the memory of the Amber Room is preserved in hands that build, voices that remember, and hearts that still yearn for the shimmer of vanished light.